and this is the show Let's Talk. I decided to do this series or interviewing of certain guests to share inspiring stories, which could be spiritual, personal, health and wellness. And tonight's guest is going to be Joe Mcquillen, who lost his son, and he wrote the book, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side. I encountered Joe because I am a psychic medium, and I met him at one of my galleries. Hey, Joe, how are you?
Hi, Sheri. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you. So let's get into this a little bit. How about like how we met? But first, I think it's more about what was the cause of us meeting. So if
Yeah,
you could share something.
let's start at the beginning of this whole process. I mean, I'm far from a guy that looks like a candidate to be dwelling in the metaphysical. Yet that's exactly who I am. Uh, in Christmas 2015, my son, 21-year-old college student, home for Christmas break, and a bunch of his friends on the weekend after Thanks or New Year's uh, decided to meet up at a lake house in Lake Beulah, Wisconsin, and kick up their heels and celebrate the last weekend before going back to college. And to be honest with you, Sally and I were kind of comfortable with this decision because they were going to be up in this bucolic setting instead of running around in the city hitting taverns and such. So we were optimistic this was a good option for his last Saturday night. He was supposed to spend the night Saturday night, come back uh, on Sunday. I grew up in Buffalo and big Bills fan, and we were going to watch a Bills game together before he went back to school. So on that morning, I was waiting for him to come back, and I get a text, and I'm texting him saying, "Buddy, where are you?" And I get a text from one of his friends, the young man that parents owned the lake house, and there was a dozen of them up there, and said, "Mr. McHugh, Chris and three friends are missing." So this was around 11 o'clock in the morning, and I grabbed the Labrador, put on a hunting jacket and some boots, and started driving up, about an hour and a half north of the North Shore of Chicago, where I live. And I expected to find him in a boathouse or in somebody else's house with a pretty co-ed, overserved or whatever. And halfway up, I got a call that said, "Mr. McQuillen, this is Scotty's uncle. Uh, it's no longer a search but a recovery. All four boys had drowned." And what happened was, they had gone up to a tavern, kicked up their heels, had a little fun, went back to the house, playing beer pong, shooting pool. At 3 o'clock in the morning, four of them went outside, passed a boathouse, decided it was a good idea with layered clothing and partially frozen lake and snoot full of Demon Run to to jump in a three-man canoe and paddle out. And none of them made it back. All of them crossed that day. You know, uh, Driving up, it occurred to me that 16 years before was my first encounter with a medium. And although the reading was rather mundane, uh, she did at the end of it say, "Your dad's here and he's telling you railroad." And if you look on my bookcase, there's a railroad lantern behind me. My old man spent 40 years of his life on the railroad. All the boys in my family, five of us, all worked on the railroad. So we're a railroad family. So when he said that 15 years before, I knew that my old man was somewhere. And driving up to Lake Beulah on January 3rd, it occurred to me that if my old man was somewhere and Chris crossed over, then he's with him. That's the way our family is. We're clannish. That's the way we roll. And at that point, decided, Sheri, that I was going to try to figure this out. What happens, where they go. And if it's a bunch of new age BS, I'll cross it off the list. I spent 30 years in the car business. I was a car dealer.
Right, but
I'm
how
not a,
synchronistic is it that you
I'm
even
not
went,
a naive guy.
but you
So
went to a medium 15 years before? So do you find that kind of synchronistic now looking back?
yeah, even at the time, I thought, okay, as this all started emerging, I thought, wait a minute, there was a reason I stumbled on this meeting 16 years before. So there's a plan. And at that point, I decided to start following the breadcrumbs and see where it takes me. And where it took me was a search, as the first book's called, My Search for Christopher on the Other Side. And subsequently, not to not to spoil the ending, but I found that there is another side. And through people like you and through channel writing, we can connect with the people we think are lost, that we think are gone.
And I think that's the huge message that I have and that you have and other people that have lost any loved ones, right? Um, let's get into like how we met. So I am a medium and I mean, this is wild and synchronistic. And you know me, I love synchronicity, guys.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Joe, you know what that is now.
Yep.
I was doing a little event at a wine shop, only 20 people, so sold out, no tickets available.
Right.
And I was already standing up in front of the group giving messages. Joe, being the bulldog he is,
Yeah.
and as you can tell now, from meeting Joe professionally, we are now friends. So I know his personality very
And personally, we're friends too, by the way.
yes, definitely. So he walks in, but at the time I had never met him, didn't know his story, knew nothing about him. And I was already giving messages. He came in late, no ticket. He walks in and I just looked at him because Christopher, his son in spirit, is such a powerful energy, right? And Chris just pops in. I looked at the Joe, this guy walking in the door with no ticket, and I said, "Your son's here, sit down." And to be honest with you, I don't remember what I said to you.
I remember the entire thing like it was yesterday, Sheri. And as a matter of fact, I was kind of told by the host, look, we're filled up. We don't think this, and I kind of strolled in, and my credo's always been, I'd rather beg for, I'd rather beg forgiveness than ask permission, so I popped in and you said, your son's here. Come here, you're going first. And there was a little alcove out in the front window. We went and sat. And I remember, right away you said, I see you playing music with a hat on backwards. What's that about? And we have a band we put together for a golf outing, a charity outing in Christopher's name. And they film it. And there's some great musicians and me. and I performed with my hat turned around backwards. You said, there's something in your left hand. What's that about? You said there's some kind of medal in your left hand. And I reached over and I had a St. Christopher medal in my hand. And you said, why do I see, he's showing me a picture. He said it was a special day of you guys fishing. And there was one of the days that when grief kind of takes you out at the knees, I still remember some of these special events. And this one day in Florida, his little brother, myself, and Chris, we went we went out backwater fishing and had a guide, and he caught some fish, and I was happy not to catch a bunch, having a cigar. And then we went to this. The captain knew this little tavern where they'll cook the fish, and he was so proud. We were eating the fish he caught, and we're all Jimmy Buffett fans, big Jimmy Buffett fans. And that's something else I brought up, and you brought up. And just as we were starting to eat, all of a sudden this guy broke out with doing a chorus of Jimmy Buffett songs. And you said, what do I see you surrounded by water? Listening to Jimmy Buffett, or what is that about? I said, that was that same event that happened for on fishing, and the hitch just kept coming after that. And you've been a very big part of my journey that started early in January 2016.
And you've been a part of my journey, and you can't make this stuff up, guys, right?
No.
You meet who you're supposed to meet. You get on this journey together with the people. But now let's get into, so Christopher passed away, and
Yeah.
I'm sure, losing a child has got to be the worst grief any person could ever go through. And I'm sure it lasts for years or a lifetime. So did you just like stumble through life for a couple of years or a few years and grief and sadness? What kept you going? How did you start contacting Christopher?
It's a great question. And I'm kind of a tenacious guy, and so literally, I started this search because if you could connect, I wanted to. I adored this kid. This kid was such a big part of me, and I still adore him, and I'm still love his company. And so I just needed to take this thing as far as it could go. Now, people grieve differently, Sheri, and I got to tell you, losing a child is different than losing anything else, right? It's not like losing your aunt, your grandmother, your cat, which people have all told me at some point. I know what you're going through. I lost a cat, and you just, move on. And, anybody who said that time heals all wounds hasn't lost a child. There's nothing like it, and the pain never goes away. You know, to this day, there's always at least a moment where it takes me out by the knees, and I've learned to let it go. I've learned to let go and let the grief take me out like a tsunami, and then dump me back on shore, and then I get on with my day. But I honor that grief, because if I try to hold it in, I'll have an ulcer. Sally, who's my wonderful, precious bride and Christopher's mom, will be married 31 years, and she shut down for 6 months, took a leave of absence, and I just kept moving. And we grieved. We had to respect each other's grief,
Yeah.
and we did. And the number is 75% of people who lost kids end up in divorce,
Wow.
right? And we just wouldn't let that happen. That our adoration for this boy who crossed over, and this energy who still visits us, helps keep us together. I'm a different guy than I was prior to January 3rd, 2016. Look, look at me. I'm wearing mala beads, and I'm burning sage, and I got candles. And I'm going to quote Haruki Murakami. And Murakami says, "Once the storm is over, you won't remember how you made it through, how you managed to survive. You won't even be sure whether the storm is really over. But one thing is certain: when you come out of the storm, you won't be the same person who walked in." That's what storms are all about. And so, I don't look like a guy that would quote Murakami, but that's the guy I am now.
Well, that's
And
so true. Like, our suffering creates or opens that door for our spiritual awakening and gets us on this path.
and wouldn't it be a shame if I wasted, I would prefer to be absolutely abysmally ignorant of all things metaphysical and go play 9 holes with Chris and go get a pizza, right?
Yeah.
But that bell can't be unrung, right? I don't have that option. So what am I going to do? And what I do, the stuff I do, talking to you, service, talking to parents who've lost kids, keeps me closer to Chris. I live my life 2 ways now, different than what I did before. It's not like I was a pirate or a bad guy, but I live now to please my God and to make my son proud. And as long as I, follow those 2 tenets, I can't go wrong.
Well, and thank you. And I think that being a man, right, being a male, a
Yeah.
lot of mothers or wives or girls, women, females, we cry in front of people, right?
Yeah.
We show our emotions, we yell, scream, hit a pillow, whatever we do. Not, there are some men that come forward. I just want to say thank you to you, because I
You're
feel
welcome.
that you're in service to help other men
Yeah.
who are guys like you
Yeah.
were not anymore,
Yeah.
and share that. And because you're opening yourself up so vulnerably, and, like, crying on camera, crying on film, expressing what your words in your book, you're not only serving, any mom or dad that's lost a child, but I think you have a passion now to also help men, right?
I do. And even Chris, and we'll get to how Chris channels me even without,
Yeah.
the help of a medium. I think you've helped hone my skills, and I'm certainly sensitive to the other side, but I'm not a medium, and I don't want to be a medium. I respect what you do, and it's been very beneficial. But Chris has come through to me, and a couple times a month in a channel writing setting. It's always around 3 o'clock in the morning. And one thing he says is, you're a good ambassador, Dad. You were picked to do this because people will listen to you. Fathers will listen to you, and they might not listen to somebody else. And my experience has been that people who do know me have said, I wouldn't believe this except that you're telling me.
Well, and how many men have I sent you? Like, I was in New York a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I texted you. I said, "Hey, this guy's going to call you."
Yeah.
I've sent quite a few grieving fathers to you because, you know, they're at a loss. They don't, they're not going to go. A
Right.
lot of them, well, some will, but a lot of them will not go to a therapist or a counselor.
Right.
So you could be their sounding
Right.
board, and just, you could share with, moms or dads or
Sure.
siblings
And I do get both. I
or
get them both.
what helps you to keep going, right? I mean, it's a day by day, minute by moment process, I'm sure.
If I thought, there's a brilliant author called Susan Geisman, and I've actually become friends with her, and she's wonderful. Written some books, and she was a commander in the Navy. She's straight up and down like 6 o'clock, and she wrote a book called Still Right Here. And if I could encapsulate the message that I'm given to moms and dads who've lost kids is that they're still right here, right? But
Exactly.
I also believe I'm a hardworking guy. I was working this morning before we did this, and I played 9 holes. Don't make feel too bad. But
Hey,
then I
70
got
in
to the
Chicago
office.
today, you can't make that up.
I've been hustling since 6 o'clock. So I believe in putting in the work, and that's what I do here. So after Christopher transitioned, I started. Bob Olson wrote this great book, Guy's Guide book. He was an investigator in L.A. and I read that book. Then I read some, uh, wonderful books. And there's a surgeon, Mary C. Neal, who wrote this Heaven and Back, which is an unbelievable
Amazing
book.
book.
And I did the work, and I still to this day put in the work.
Well, so let's talk about that. So,
Yeah,
like, you're grieving, what, for 2, 3 years?
I'm
Sad?
grieving for 7+ years, Cher.
Okay.
I'm still grieving.
I know, you always will, right? But
Yep.
let's I guess what I'm saying is, like, grieving up until when you started channeling your son. So, like, how many years before you started channeling Chris?
I
And
went to
how did
mediums
you
right
start?
away. I was like 7, 8 months in when I met you. That was in the fall, I believe. And Christopher transitioned January 3rd. I'd seen a number of different mediums, and in most cases, phenomenal. You and I've talked about a couple of swing and misses, but it was never you. That's a fact.
Well,
You
thank you.
know, you're a fabulous medium. I will tell you that,
Thank you.
and say to your audience, she's a fabulous medium. I refer a lot of people to you because of the faith I have in your pure heart. So the first anniversary of Christopher's Crossing, I had started coming into this room, which is my office, my home office. And I'd started waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and coming in here and just, lighting some sage and lit candles and just trying to feel him, because I knew he was happy in this room, right? This is a good place for him. This is a thin place. I write about that. And so I started listening to guided meditations. There's some fabulous ones. But you go on, just pull guided meditation to reach the other side on your cell phone, and you start find the ones that work for you, right? There's a fabulous one from Medium Kareem. It's my favorite, and you can go look it online about to touch a guided
For
meditation.
the audience, there's tons of them on YouTube, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
there's tons, and I'll listen to 2 or 3 regularly, but most of the time I randomly pick one, and some of them are
you can even
great.
meditate just to Stairway to Heaven or to any music you like to
Yeah, but the guided ones help because
help beginners, yeah.
you're almost getting hypnotized. Now
Mhm.
it kind of puts you in all these things. I think are advantages. I like every advantage I can
The
get. I'm
tools.
I'm
Yeah.
going to hone my skills and take advantage, cut every edge that I can. So on the first anniversary, I did the whole guided meditation. I did the whole candles, sage, all of it, aligning my chakras, which I do, and things I'd picked up along the way. And on
Sorry.
the first anniversary at 3 o'clock in the morning, January 3rd, 2007, he came through, and I had a legal pad on my desk just from work. And I started writing down the messages, and he started describing heaven and the
Well,
air
you
and the
just felt
colors.
inspired? Did you feel hot, cold,
No,
tingles?
I felt a little. First of all, I was a little surprised, and then I was wondering if I had lost leaving the reservation, and they were going to come in a straitjacket and put me
Exactly.
out. But I just, what? Here, there's a great quote. A woman, a friend of my buddies, a cousin of my buddies. I was having coffee with her, and she was talking about having the confidence to not care what people think if you're doing something a little off the wall. And she gave me this great quote: "The unassailable self-confidence that comes from a childhood insulated with love." So I grew up in a very dysfunctional family, wonderfully crazy, fun, wacky, great, impromptu football games, parties, loud, late, 10 kids, Irish Catholic, wonderful environment, right? So I never really cared a whole lot outside of the clan what anybody thought. And so I was able to go off on a limb in a little bit. So I just started writing it down and figured we'll figure this out later, right?
Swing it.
And I did. I wrote it all down, and it's in the dark other than candlelight. So the next morning I turned the lights on and started editing it and just writing making sure I could read it. So, and then I started putting it in a file. These every one of these sessions, and here's the really cool thing, Cher. The first one he came through, he said, Dad, you got to let go of the resentment. I love Scotty. He loved me. He was a buddy. Wasn't his fault. Now Scotty's the kid who owned the lake house, and I was mad because they were a little loose and easy with discipline and they were a bit entitled. And so I had to blame somebody. So I'm blaming them.
And
And
anger is a normal part of grieving. It's one of the
I wanted
stages.
to hold on to that resentment,
Yeah.
right? And the truth of the matter is it had nothing to do with it. It could have been at my house. It could have been at your house.
Oh, that's
Bunch of kids drinking, running around. They're 21. They weren't 12, right? So, but he said, you got to let go of this, Dad. And so I wasn't ready to, but because my son asked me, I said, all right, pal, for you, I will. And I thought, all right, besides, when am I going to see this kid again, right? So fast forward 12 hours. I get a text from some of his college fraternity buddies who are like, they grew up similar to me, blue collar backgrounds, wonderful kids, and diverse, backgrounds. And I love these kids and they're still part of our lives. Next Saturday, they're having a celebration for his birthday. It's been the 7th annual. They've done it ever since the event. They have a birthday party for him, raise money for charity, have,
Wow.
drink a little bit, laugh a little bit. And this
And they
year's
go to
at a
the
bowling alley.
cemetery? They go to the
Huh?
cemetery and they
No,
meet at
January cemetery, we do it as anniversary. This
okay.
one we've done pub crawls, and I'm just an invitee, right?
Yeah.
And these guys run it, and they run and they raise money for Imbalance Ranch Academy. And my buddy Rick last year matched their donation, so all of a sudden these kids are getting scholarships and stuff
And what
because of
is
Chris.
Imbalance Ranch?
There's 2 charities we're involved in. One is Penguin Players, which is Chris was studying to be special ed. And so it's young adults who are performing arts, all with special needs, and that was and so the first year, the money we raised from the funeral and everything else we donated, and now we do this golf outing. This will be the 8th annual, and half goes to Imbalance Ranch, which is a boarding school for boys with addiction, 14 to 18. I'm 37 years sober. I was nuts. In fact, I'm still here. So I'm a big fan. I sit on the board there. And the
And
scholarships that give
Christopher
out.
went to Imbalance Ranch,
Yep,
yes?
Christopher went to Imbalance Ranch, and it changed his life. He chose not to stay on the recovery path, as young people often don't, but it changed him spiritually, and it was really an amazing. We had 2,000 people at his wake.
Wow.
2,000. That's how many
I
lives
wish
he
I would've
touched.
met him. I mean, because he's such a beautiful energy when he comes through in spirit,
Yeah,
and I've met some of his friends. I've been to the golf outing.
he's
There's not a
amazing.
person that didn't love Christopher.
There's not a person. So the cool thing, this 12 hours later, I get this text that said, Mr. McHugh, a few of us are going to meet at the grave. Can you come meet? And Sally and I were going to meet that night and do a, light a Chinese candle at dusk, and hold hands and miss our boy. But here they said 3:30. I said, sure. I got a hockey cooler with beer and Gatorade and a box of cigars. Figured 6, 7 kids will talk about, reminisce, right? I get up there and the circular driveway, Sacred Heart was full. There were 40 kids at his grave. 40. And one of the first kids I saw was this Scotty. So I woke up
The child that had the lake house.
the lake house, the one that I was holding resentment, and Chris made me let go of. So it figured out that not only was Chris trying to heal my heart, but he was also trying to make sure that I wasn't going to feel awkward at this moment, 12 hours later.
Exactly.
Right. So that when I saw him, I could just embrace him and say, dude, it wasn't your fault. Could have been anywhere.
And you
He
said
loved
that to this child.
Yeah.
Well, look at
Yeah.
that healing that you brought him. And I apologize for coughing. I've been sick all week.
I know you have.
So sorry, you guys, for coughing. There's no mute button. I was looking for one. So my next question is, though, so you start channeling Chris at 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Did this start happening like regularly?
Yeah.
Like you were taking notes, putting them in a folder? Like how did this turn into a book?
Well, that's exact. I had no intention of writing a book. Right. My idea was I started doing this was doing 2, 3 times a month. I'd get woke up at 3, throw some water on my face, right? Start doing my meditation thing, chakra thing. And he'd start coming through. I'd get a chill on the back of my neck. He'd start coming through. It's like messages through a headset. And I just started writing.
It's like telepathy.
In his voice, though, too. I'd add, that dark, deeper, cool voice. And so I assumed that I was just going to have these and put these notes together. And someday I'm sitting on a rocking chair with a cigar. I'd go through the notes to feel close to my boy. And, a year into it, I started recording all the medium sessions. I originally started taking notes, and then I started recording them all. And a year into it, I got the message, that it was, you're going to put this in a book and you're going to help people. And I look back and I thought, he knew it all along. I was the only one. I wasn't let in on the joke
Laughs
here,
on you.
So, and then I was finishing the manuscript and I learned manuscript. It wasn't a book at the time, it was a manuscript.
Yeah.
And I was finishing the manuscript and I was feeling really melancholy, which is another Irish term, right? Because I was worried that what if once this project is over, maybe that closeness will dissipate, right? Maybe it'll lessen. And so I was feeling a little blue. And I got a message, literally a download from him. He said, we're not done, Pop. You're going to be writing we'll be writing together until you cross.
Yeah.
And so that took the weight off my shoulders that I could continue to write. And I'm working. The second book is We're Not Done Yet, Pop. My lessons from the other side. And the third book that I'm working on now is One Foot in Both Worlds, because that's literally where I am these days, Sheri.
Yeah.
I'm on this side where I'm a producer. I do business. I work hard, love to play golf, got the buddies, hang out, wonderful bride, good kids. I have all that. I've got the life beyond my wildest dreams.
So,
but the other side, I have the metaphysical that I won't let go of.
Well, because we are a spirit in a human body, right? When we die, we return to spirit. So did writing this book keep you in grief, do you think? Or did it?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay.
I got to tell you, writing this book gave me air to breathe, right? And so I will tell you that, when I write or after one of those monthly, a couple times a month medium, sessions where he channels, it kicks the crap out of me. I mean, it's emotionally draining and hard. But the bottom line is, I'm not sure if this life would have a lot of meaning for me if I wasn't continuing down this path.
Yes. And I agree. Like I've, my abilities or gifts opened up after going through, emotional stuff.
Yeah.
I got paralyzed. My mom had a stroke. It was just a catastrophe after another. And, that does create depression. And I always, share my story a little bit where I feel that sometimes we have to hit that rock bottom to have that spiritual awakening. It's almost like breaking open the heart to get
Yes.
the soul. You pick the doozy of a way, like we signed up for this, which is crazy, right?
I want to renegotiate my soul contract.
Randomly. Next time
Yeah.
we're not doing this crap, okay?
Right.
But no way, we're not having these same experiences. The good ones, sure, not the bad. So now I know getting a book published is very difficult.
Yeah.
And I know you did find a publisher. How did that happen? Or were you guided or
This
inspired?
is a great story. No idea. I'm not an author, right? I was a car dealer. I'm a loan officer in mortgages, right? Mortgage broker, although brokers don't exist anymore. But that's what I do, and I've been really fortunate, been very successful. And I like to read. I like to listen to books but I never attempted to be a writer. I had no reason, no motivation, right? And, but I had this manuscript that I had written that I thought was pretty dang good. And so I started I started meeting with authors that lived in the Chicago area. Most of them are really cool about sitting down and meeting with you and talking to you. And I had a lot of extra shot lattes back then, doing my authors tour. And they all said the same thing. You got to find an agent and a publicist and a publisher who are on the same page, a genre.
Same genre, yeah.
Yeah. So I looked up genre. And then, I'm kidding. I knew what genre was. But I looked up, and then started going. I downloaded a book about, publishers and that you bought, and then you'd start sending. And I get to this Lisa Hagen, and she was both an agent and a publisher. And I go, dude, that works, And so I reached out to her and sent her a couple of excerpts. And she said, I was really touched by the story. And basically she said, I was kind of surprised that given the subject was so heavy, that it was that you were so funny. And I said, and he's a funny spirit too. And she said, but there's not a chance I'm going to read this. And this is like in April. She said, there's not a chance I'm going to be able to read this summer. just too many. I get, 300-400 books a month or a week or whatever,
Yeah.
maybe a month. I don't know, but she gets a ton of books. She said, but I will get around to reading it. And I said, yeah, I got a feeling that you may want to read it a little earlier, but okay.
Pushing
So
your way through again.
yeah, so I waited like a week, which I thought was really responsible. And you can't just, hey, what do you think now? You ready? So my buddy Rick Blummer is one of my best friends, and the family sold the Blummer chocolate, but at the time they owned Blummer chocolate. So I said, hey, give me one of those great gift boxes, and I UPS'd her a box
Oh my
of
god.
premium chocolates. I said,
I
hey,
never got chocolate.
I got some for you. She said, hey, you like chocolate? She goes, I can't believe you said that. Before you picked up your phone, I said to the girl next to us, I wish we had some of that Swiss chocolate that we brought back from Switzerland. She
Wow.
said, I did this 10 minutes ago and,
Amazing.
and you UPS'd me chocolates. And I said, yeah, see how that, she called me 3 or 4 days later, said, I read your book. It's manuscript, excuse me. She goes, I think it's terrific. And not only do I want to be your agent, paperwork's on the way for you to sign, but I want to publish it myself. She had a small publishing company.
And doesn't that show you that your story was meant to be out there?
And she said, by the way, I felt your son around me the minute I opened the book. She said, and every time I tried to not continue reading, he wouldn't let me.
So he's
She's
pulling strings
so there
for
was kind of special delivery, and now her entire work now is all about the metaphysical. She's changed her entire publishing that it's only about the metaphysical. And I adore her, and she sends me other authors to read, or
Mhm.
or if I'll review them or whatever, and I'm happy to accommodate. I do anything for her. So she's published both books, and we're working on the third, and we'll let God handle it. I'm doing a screenplay, and we'll see where that works. But
Meant to
my
be.
job is to do the work, and Chris's job is to get it done. And so far we haven't failed.
So you've been to a lot of mediums, and
Yeah,
there's different types of mediums. So I'm
yeah,
a very evidential medium, like I might get their names, date of death,
right.
birth, how they died, anything that's evidential. And then there's just different styles of mediums. Um, have you ever not had a medium connect? Has
Yeah,
anyone ever really disappointed you? And I'm not asking for names, just
yeah. One that did, and there was another one that um, really early on. It was his first. He transitioned January, and I don't use the word death because we don't die. It's funny. You quoted something earlier, and I don't even think you realized it where the quote came from. But we went around saying because it was in the secret. It says, everybody quotes it. It's like we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience, and that was quoted by Father Pierre Desjardins in like 1920. So it's not New Age.
this isn't woo. What's funny is I was actually talking to somebody recently, and it was like a podcasty interview kind of thing. And sometimes, like, I'm gonna tell you right now, Chris is here. I felt them
Yeah,
from the very beginning,
I
okay?
love it.
He's just like, "Hey, dad, I'm here. Hey, pop," lots of love to you from him. But it was weird is that when I was being interviewed or just, talking and sharing like we're doing, all of a sudden spirit came in my head and they're like, demystify spirit or demystify the mediumship because that's Christopher, guys. We're okay. He's loving. Here we go. He's loving that we're honoring him or that you are. Okay.
So are
But,
you.
it's you guys, there's evidence to prove this. This is why you want to go, in my opinion, to an evidential medium. Only stuff like, that
Can I
I
tell a story? I'm going to tell a story about you, and it wasn't even Chris. So Chris always comes through. I mean, he loves you. I think he would have been one of the kids playing beer pong in your basement, right?
you'd be welcome.
Right. He'd blend in,
No more.
and
They're gone. They're adults now.
thank God. But he would have, right? And his birthday's coming up. It's coming up Saturday. He would have been
Oh,
29, and I think about what that means or what it could have meant, and it is what it is, right? Um, but I was in Florida, and you and I called you just on a lark, just because we're friends, and I was talking. I wasn't looking for a reading. I was just kind of giving you a heads up what was going on, and you said, Christopher, come through, and you're going, I can't believe he's not coming through. He goes, but somebody else, your sister's coming through. Are you in her house? Now you had no idea where I was. And I said, yeah. Now Marcia was Christopher's godmother. They adored each other. And she transitioned in 2019 and they're together. I mean, I know they're together.
Oh,
And I had just come back from Siesta Key with Sally. And Siesta Key is a thin place. It's the beach is quartz crystal. It's a very sacred place. The Indians consider it sacred. Never got hit by the hurricanes that take over all of Sarasota.
wow.
Right? It's sacred. And they have drum circles in the mornings there. It's an amazing joint. If you get a chance, go to Sarasota. And I always go at 3:00 in the morning, late midnight, late. You know me. And so I always bring back some Siesta Key sand, which I just gave you some.
Thank you.
So I, sitting, at a desk at my sister's house, and I'd rented it for a couple months, and I was hanging out there and writing, playing golf. And you said, Marcia wants to know where the keys are. Now, Marcia's my sister, and we transition. And so before we left for Siesta Key, I put the keys under the mat because I was told to. But I never checked because I just used the garage door opener in and out, right? So I went and looked, and the keys weren't on the mat. And now this wasn't a Zoom call. This was a cell phone call. I'm out on the deck, and you said, Marcia says, don't get locked out. And I said, okay. And I looked over on a hook where the master keys, because there's 2 sets. And I put those in my pocket and walked back out on the deck. And you said, Marcia said, put the keys back on the hook.
That was so
it's like, now, what more evidence do you, and then you said one thing, you said, I have a picture that I have up here of a cardinal. Chris sends me cardinals, and it's a weathered frame with a cardinal. And she had the same picture. I sent it to her, a painting. And when I came back from Siesta Key, I had Sally picked up like 200 perfectly fitted seashells, right? I had one seashell and I put it on top of a frame. And you said, Marcia said there's one seashell on the picture you sent her, and it's near the family portrait in the dining room. I mean, come on. You don't, how do you know there's a dining room? That's a family portrait next to the picture I gave Marcia. So that's when people talk about evidentiary mediums, you're a perfect example of hitting it out of the park. Do you think there was ever, and then you said things that you didn't even know made sense. You said, Marcia's talking about checkers, but not the game. Well, checkers, before I went to college, Marcia and I were close. She was 16 years older than I was. I adored her, big source of love for me. And she said, we used to go to this bar in North Buffalo called Checkers, and it had a checkered tablecloth, and you described the tablecloth. And we used to drink sangria there and talk about life and what my plans were going to be. And that was our joint, Checkers, and she brought that up. And it was like, you don't even know the impact of what that meant, but she did, and I did. Here's something. Marcia was such a source of love to me that, she had cancer for 5 years and did everything. Went to MJ Anderson, went to the Mayo Clinic. She did everything to fight it. And when it wasn't working, she was such an amazing woman. She said, I'm done, and she made plans for all her funeral, everything. She handled everything of her demise. And not long before she transitioned, we were together, and she said, honey, Joey, you gave me the greatest gift. I read your book, and I'm not afraid to die.
And you know what, Joe, what just popped in my head is my dad, or I think it was my dad was in the hospital. And this is, I don't know if you remember this, but I guess Marcia was just ready to pass.
Yeah.
You called me, and I had just got into the hospital. I think it was my dad, and my mom or my dad, they were both kind of dying close together. And I was there, and I'm like, Joe, I can't talk to anybody right now. I'm walking into the hospital room for my parent, And he's like, please. I went into the bathroom at the hospital. I'm like, okay, Joe, I'll give you a few minutes. Marcia gets on the phone with me, and I had never talked to her before, and she was so sweet. She was already, I think, very close to transitioning in the hospital.
4 days later.
Okay. And I'll never forget, in the bathroom of the hospital that I'm standing in, and I was sad, so I didn't even know if I could do it, right? Because I was freaking out over my parents. All of a sudden, as I'm talking to her, Chris came through.
Yeah.
The poodle or some dogs came through.
These stupid Maltese. And you were confused because you said to me, I don't get it. there's a dog, but you said the dog's there. There was a dog on the other side, Ginger, who had crossed over, and they bought the exact same replica dog
Oh my
after Ginger died, and it was still on her, on the both.
wow.
So there was the exact same looking
Living
dog
and dead
on
dog.
each side, and you're going, I don't get this. I go, well, it's a funny story.
So, but it was really like, so I can just, attest to the fact that she was ready. And
No,
I just from talking to her in the bathroom, she was so happy to hear about that dog waiting for her and
yeah,
Chris and somebody else, I can't remember, also came
Jerry,
through.
Jerry
So,
and Pat.
is there anything that you could tell any parent before we wrap this up that you really, from your heart,
Yeah,
could give them some guidance or advice or something to help them through, especially the first year
right,
of
right.
grief?
The first week, the first month,
Yeah.
um, one thing I will tell you, and it is that you got to do some of the work, right? I mean, I remember, and I think you were there when I was at Wilmette Theater,
Mhm.
and a woman said to me, my sister's been gone 3 years. I haven't heard from her. I go, well, what have you done? What have you done to enhance your connection? You're right. I mean, what have you do? Do you meditate? Meditation's a huge part of the deal. And people will say, well, I'm not good at it. We'll get better. It's an important
Takes
aspect.
practice.
Yeah, it does, and it's an important aspect for a very big payout, right? You're whining about the loss of your child, but you're not willing to put in the work to
Exactly.
connect you, and take a leap of faith. Do a little research. Go on YouTube. My email is jbmcquillen@gmail.com, and I have a website at joemcquillen.net with a bunch of interviews. My book, especially the first one, is really helpful when you first lose a child, and it'll help you. It'll bring some comfort and hope. So the one thing I'm just going to say is, this is real. I'm not the kind of guy that gets hustled by something. I've been doing this for 7+ years, and the closeness that I feel from with Christopher, allows me to wake up tomorrow and do it again. And if I can do a little service and help some people out, that's what Chris wants me to do. And so
Exactly.
that's what I'm going to do. But you got to put in the work. You can't. It's like back when you were a teenager and saying, nobody's calling me for a party. Well, maybe you got to pick up the phone and make a few calls. So put in the effort. Find a medium. Let me tell you, the days of the charlatan mediums in the world of the internet are gone. They wouldn't
There are a
exist.
lot of fakes though, and I can tell you where they are, but I'm not gonna do it on here.
Right. But they're gonna if you the
Go for a
more you
referral.
research,
Yes.
right, the more you're gonna find out if somebody's a hustler. And the second thing is, listen to your heart and listen to people that you love. So there's my next door neighbor. They're gonna be reaching out to you, Cher, when your mom comes back from Florida or Arizona. So referrals, helping parents heal is one of the greatest
That's a good
advantages that you could have. Join it tomorrow, and they have a bunch of speakers, mediums,
but I think it helps them know
books.
they're not alone, right?
You're not alone. And there's things I'll write on helping parents heal and post like I did it that I might not post somewhere else because I'm not looking for sympathy. Do I look like a guy that's looking for sympathy? I'm not. But it's sure nice to know that there's other people carrying the rock just like you are, man. You know,
And you're not
and
alone in this, you know?
you're not alone. And there's something special about parents who've lost kids. You know, we all know that we get to see them again. And that's the one thing I want to end this with. I lived a life beyond my wildest dreams, right? I still got work to do. I've got parents to touch. I got money to make. I got,
The
I got
family
help.
to take
I
care of.
got two kids that are still need their old man, a wonderful bride. But if God touched me on the shoulder and said, "Pal, you're in the lineup tomorrow on the other side," I'm good because I get to spend the next go around the track with my son. You know,
Don't
so
go anywhere yet,
I'm
dude.
not going anywhere.
You have a
But
lot of people to help still and
I
hurt still.
got I got work to do and friends to be
And
with.
actually what
So
I'm hearing is you have 2 more books than you. So
okay,
you
well,
did say
it's
you're
a
working on
timeline. So at least I know I'll make Social Security at least.
Christopher's here right now, and he's showing me a heart for some reason. Is there anything with a heart that goes with Christopher or Marcia?
Well, everything with Christopher and
Is there
Marcia
any
goes
hurt
with a
that's
heart.
by you right now?
I do not see anything with a
So are you might start getting signs of hurts, like, you might
yeah.
find her
Well, every time when I do I use the heart emoji and the broken heart emoji often when I write and when I'm responding to parents who've lost kids.
okay.
So that might be what he's talking about,
No,
but
I just think be aware that you might
I
see,
will.
you know you pick up your cup and it leaves a watermark of a heart, okay?
Okay, I
Uh,
will.
he's got your dog.
He's got what?
He's got your dog.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. Here's another funny story.
Is it Cassie?
Cassidy. Yeah, I
Okay,
called her
Cassie.
Cassie,
I'm hearing
but I called her Cassie, but her
okay,
name
she's
was
named
Cassidy.
Cassie. Okay.
Okay, so Cass, and I bought 3 graves, and when Christopher was buried, it was January in North Shore of Chicago, frozen cold. Well, when the snow melted, it turns out he had buried him right next to another couple. Even though we had a couple other graves going, I was livid. I moved him over one grave,
Oh, jeez.
and it's perfect.
Is that where you exhumed him? You actually
Oh, yeah, I did.
wow.
Oh yeah, I kicked up stink and I told them that they should do it for nothing. I ended up writing a check, but I moved him over.
There's Joe like a bull in a china shop
That's
again.
right, and it's perfect. I kept saying, "Am I wasting money? Is this stupid?" But I felt compelled. I listened to spirit and I did this. And I go there all the time and I feel wonderfully comfortable there.
Aw,
And I'll occupy the one that he was in, right? It's not like it's going to strangers. But when Cassidy was cremated in May, you know, hold on a second. I just want to show you something. You're funny. Look behind me on that little card. What is that?
oh god, I can't see it. What is
Hold
that?
on. It's a heart
Are you serious?
right there. See it right there?
Oh, yeah.
Right
What is
over my
that?
shoulder. That's from Helping Parents Heal.
Oh, okay.
It's on my bookshelf. So you're funny.
I didn't even see
So
it.
so when
I don't
Cassidy
have my glasses on, so
we cremated her, it was perfect. They came to the house, they gave her a shot. We were all surrounding her. She had her head on my lap, looking in my eyes. And then we got the ashes back. We made a little shrine in the house, and then I took the other half of the ashes, and I waited till nobody was around, and I just dug a hole next to Chris in the grave and planted Chris. So now instead of bringing Cassidy to visit Chris, I go visit them both.
wait. You put
Yeah,
the
yeah.
dog next to
I
Chris?
buried the dog next to my son.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know that you could talk about that, Joe.
What are they going to do? Exhume my dog? Hey, it's my grave. Remember, that's
Oh,
still
you own
mine.
it? Yeah, you have
I own it.
that's something you would do. I love it,
And
and
you know what? All the guys at the grave, they're all work there for
I
cigarettes.
know you.
I gave them cigars. I love these guys. I tip them. They're wonderful fellas. Work real hard and they're real respectful of everybody there. You meet really nice people at the graves. I tell you.
So I feel like the dog is running with him, he's showing me right
Yeah,
now, and I don't know if
yeah,
the dog had any, sorry if I don't look at you, when I
yeah,
journal, I don't look at you.
yeah.
I feel like the dog had hips, like it couldn't run anymore,
She had
or back legs,
a
like
couple years back, and she was a hunting dog. She was a family dog. She sleep on the couch for criminy sakes, and she never left Christopher. That was my dog. I take her to work. I took her everywhere. The minute Christopher transitioned, she went to Sally and never left her side, and she
wow.
became her dog. I mean, she was mine too, but Sally and her were friends, but they were. And she and Sally, I'd take the dog to work, and I'd get a text, "Where's my dog?" And
I
so,
think
but she was a hunting dog, but she tore a ligament when she got older, back leg.
okay.
So she could run, but it was like on 3 legs,
In pain, yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, it was her hunting days were over, and her, I'd still
Chris
take it
is
on the
showing me
lakes.
a ball right now, so they're playing ball, so I don't know if she
I would take a ball and
okay.
I'd throw it into the lake, and she'd swim out. We
So
do that.
she's doing that now, and what's really cool about this, you guys, before I guess we were gonna end, and here we go.
Yeah,
I think the reason this is happening, though, and the reason the dog is coming through is that our listeners will know our animals go to spirit too, and they're also with us, just like our children, our parents, our grandparents. Animals have a soul also.
and
And
you know what I've researched and found out, and we all do a life review when we cross, right?
oh yeah,
Animals don't; they go right up, and they don't know any better. It's like they don't cross over, and all of a sudden they're in. I mean, they're the intelligence of a 4-year-old, right? It's not all of a sudden they're Rhodes scholars, so they don't know any difference, but they don't care, right? To them, it's just pure joy,
yeah.
just running, laughing, and to this day,
Living in the present moment.
I'll see her and hear out of the corner of my eye. I know that Cassie's still around too.
Oh, 100%. And I have 2 new puppies this year, and I saw one in my meditation 6 years ago, and 6 years later, I got her.
Yeah.
So I believe our animals also choose us, just like I believe our children do in the spirit world. But Joe, if you have any final message you want to give, I just want to thank you so much for being you. I'm grateful
Yeah.
that you're in my life and
Nobody else wants the job, Cher. So I'll continue to be me.
you're the
And I'm going to quote uh, the wonderful Susan Geisman and just say, if you've lost a child, you lost a loved one, you lost a husband, you lost a spouse, a wife, they're still right here.
yes.
Just do the work.
And seek and you will find, right? Thank you, Joe. God bless you. And thank you so much for sharing your story. You
Namaste.
can get a hold of me at sherrythemedium.com or Joe Mcquillen. What's your website?
JoeMcQuillen.net.
And your name of your books are on Amazon. And what are the titles?
My Search for Christopher on the Other Side is the first one. And the second one's We're Not Done Yet, Pop, My Lessons from the Other Side.
Thank you, guys. Definitely read the reviews. Like I said, I've read it. I've read both his books, and he actually put me in it, and I was surprised. So thank
Both
you.
books. And you're heavy in the third one, too, by the way, Cher.
Oh, really? And I don't even know.
Oh,
I just talked to him on the phone, and all of a sudden I read his book, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing in there? I'm like, God, he writes down every time I talk to him on the phone.
yes, I do.
And I apologize again for coughing, but I've been sick all week. So sorry, people. But, that's welcome to the world of Zoom, right? So, again, thank you so much. Thank you for being in my life. Thank you for helping all the parents out there and anyone grieving.
God
And God
bless.
bless you, Joe. Take care. Bye bye.